The emergency beacon signal cut through the static at 00230 hours, its distinctive chirp filling the Navy SEAL Tactical Operations Center in Coronado, California. Colonel James Iron Man Winters set his coffee mug down slowly, the black liquid inside barely rippling despite the tremor in his weathered hands. At 63, the former SEAL commander now served as senior advisor, his body bearing the scars of conflicts most Americans only read about in history books. "Sir, I think you need to see this." Chief Petty Officer Wilson's voice held the kind of tension that Winters had heard too many times before. In Saigon in 75, in the sands of Desert Storm, in 100 other places where men faced impossible situations. "We're picking up an emergency beacon. Authentication code matches Lieutenant Coleman's." Winters felt his blood turn to ice. Rachel Coleman was dead. Had been for 3 weeks. The first female Navy SEAL to see combat had died when her Black Hawk was shot down over Syria. Or so they'd been told. "That's impossible," Winters said, the words automatic, though something deeper, that old warrior's instinct, stirred within him. "I was at her memorial service, sir." Wilson's eyes met his. "But this is her beacon, her authentication code." The digital display showed a blinking red dot in northern Iran, just south of the Caspian Sea. A place where Americans weren't supposed to be. A place where a supposedly dead SEAL definitely shouldn't be. "The signal's using an old Morse pattern," Winters noted, moving closer to the screen. 3 short, 2 long, 1 short. His finger traced the pattern in the air. "That's Rachel's personal identifier. We developed it during her advanced training." "Sir, this facility, it's not on any of our maps." Winters studied the satellite imagery, a compound nestled against the base of a mountain range. The layout was familiar. Too familiar. "I've seen this before," he muttered. "Moscow, 1985. This is built to KGB black site specifications from the Cold War." His mind flashed back to Rachel Coleman's memorial service. The empty casket draped with the American flag. The somber faces of her SEAL teammates. Her younger sister Karen, accepting the folded flag with tears streaming down her face. "Get Lieutenant Commander Reynolds in here now," Winters ordered, "and put me through to Admiral Hargrove on Secure Channel Alpha." Within 30 minutes, the tactical room had filled with SEAL Team 6's command staff. Lieutenant Commander Michael Maverick Reynolds stood with arms crossed, his 6'2" frame rigid with tension. At 38, Reynolds was in his prime, commanding the most elite special operations unit in the world. "You're telling me Coleman is alive?" Reynolds' voice was controlled, but Winters could hear the fury beneath. Rachel had been one of his best operators. "The signal is authentic," Winters confirmed, "and it's using Rachel's personal identifier. That's not in any database. It's something only she and I know." "How the hell did she end up in an Iranian black site?" Master Chief Frank Doc Matthews asked. The 45-year-old combat medic had treated Rachel after her last 3 missions. They developed a close friendship. "And why were we told she was killed in action?" added Lieutenant Jackson Ghost Walker, the team's 35-year-old reconnaissance specialist. Before Winters could respond, the secure video link activated. Admiral Eleanor Hargrove's face appeared on screen, her 60-year-old features hardened by decades of naval command. "Colonel Winters, I understand you've picked up an anomalous signal?" "It's not anomalous, Admiral. It's Lieutenant Rachel Coleman. She's alive." Hargrove's expression didn't change, but something flashed behind her eyes. Not surprise, Winters realized. Something else. "I need everyone out except for Colonel Winters and Commander Reynolds," Hargrove ordered. When the room had cleared, Hargrove leaned closer to the camera. "What I'm about to tell you is classified above top secret. Operation Nightshade. Coleman wasn't supposed to die in that crash." "She was never on that Black Hawk," Winters realized, the pieces falling into place. Correct. She was on a deep cover assignment. CIA Director Keller ran the operation personally. Reynolds slammed his fist on the table. With all due respect, Admiral, why wasn't I informed? She's one of my operators. Because the target was Viktor Baranov. Winters felt the name like a physical blow. Images flashed through his mind. Moscow, 1989. The coldest winter on record. A shootout in a warehouse by the river. A man with ice-blue eyes escaping into the night. Baranov is dead, Winters said. He died when the Soviet Union collapsed. That's what he wanted everyone to believe, Hargrove replied. But he's been operating a sophisticated arms network for years. Coleman was sent to infiltrate his organization through an Iranian proxy. Her supposed death was her cover. And now she's activated her emergency beacon, Reynolds said, which means the operation went sideways. Hargrove nodded grimly. Director Keller wants to maintain the operation. He's ordered no rescue attempt. Winters and Reynolds exchanged glances. In that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them, the bond of the SEAL Brotherhood that transcended rank, regulations, and even direct orders. Admiral, Winters said carefully, I'm scheduled to begin my retirement leave tomorrow. I'd like to file the paperwork immediately. Hargrove's eyes narrowed slightly. And Commander Reynolds has accumulated considerable unused leave time as well, I believe. Yes, ma'am, Reynolds answered. My team could use some R&R. I see. Hargrove was silent for a long moment. For the record, I'm ordering you to stand down on this matter. Then, more softly, but if I were in your position, I'd remember that SEALs never leave their own behind. You have 72 hours before I'm required to brief the Joint Chiefs. The screen went dark. Well, Reynolds said, looks like we're going on vacation to Iran. Winters nodded, already calculating logistics in his head. Assemble your best men. Ghost, Doc, and 2 others. Small team, fast infiltration. What aren't you telling me, sir? Reynolds asked. You knew Baranov during the Cold War, didn't you? Winters' hand unconsciously moved to the scar that ran from his collarbone to his sternum, a souvenir from a KGB interrogator's knife. Let's just say we have unfinished business. As Reynolds left to prepare the team, Winters pulled out his secure phone and dialed a number he hadn't used in years. When it connected, he spoke just 2 words. Amberglass. The voice on the other end paused, then replied, The ice still melts, old friend. I need transport. Off the books. Iran. Dangerous waters, James, even for Iron Man. Rachel Coleman is alive. Another pause. I'll have a MC-130J Commando 2 ready at 0100, North Island, Hangar 7. Winters was about to end the call when the voice added, Baranov is worse than you remember, James. He's not just selling weapons anymore. What's he into? The future. Or rather, the end of ours. Project Aurora. The line went dead, leaving Winters staring at his reflection in the office window. The years had added silver to his temples and lines around his eyes, but the steel in his gaze remained unchanged. Rachel Coleman was more than just another operator to him. She represented everything he'd fought for throughout his career, the future of the service, the evolution of the SEALs. He'd personally endorsed her application to BUDS training when half the command structure was against it. Now she was in the hands of a man Winters had hunted for decades. A man whose cruelty was legendary, even among the hardened killers of the KGB. For the first time in years, Colonel James Winters felt true fear. The MC-130J Commando 2 aircraft cut through the night sky at 30,000 feet, its matte black exterior invisible against the darkness. Inside, 5 men made final adjustments to their equipment. Colonel Winters watched as Commander Reynolds checked his oxygen mask and the seal on his tactical goggles. Halo jump into denied territory, Winters mused. Just like the old days. Reynolds nodded, his focus unwavering. Except back then, You were the one jumping. Winters smiled grimly. Too many surgeries and too many birthdays between then and now. He tapped his titanium knee, a parting gift from a Russian anti-personnel mine in Afghanistan. But my mind's still sharp. I'll coordinate from here. The aircraft's loadmaster approached. 10 minutes to drop zone, sir. Winters nodded, then addressed the team. One final briefing. We're inserting 30 miles from the target facility. Ghost will lead the ground approach. Maverick has tactical command. Doc handles medical and any civilian extraction. This is Iranian sovereign territory. Gentlemen, if you're captured, the United States government will disavow all knowledge of your actions. Just like the good old days, Doc Matthews quipped, adjusting his medical kit. Our intel on the facility is limited, Winters continued. But I've been in similar KGB structures. 2 levels above ground, at least 3 below. Primary holding cells will be on the lowest level. Expect Russian advisors alongside Iranian Revolutionary Guard. Baranov doesn't trust locals for his inner security circle. Reynolds checked his HK-416 assault rifle one last time. What's our extraction plan? Helicopter pickup at these coordinates, Winters pointed to a map. 400 hours tomorrow. You missed that window, you're on your own for 24 hours until the backup extraction. The red light came on. 3 minutes to drop. One more thing, Winters said, his voice taking on a different quality. Less the commander, more the mentor. Rachel Coleman is not just any operator. She was chosen for this mission because she's exceptional. Whatever condition you find her in, remember that. She will still be fighting. Count on it. 2 minutes! The men stood, moving toward the rear ramp. Colonel, Reynolds said, if we don't make it back, you'll make it back, Winters interrupted. All of you, including Rachel. That's an order. The ramp lowered, revealing the vast emptiness of night. One by one, the 4 SEALs disappeared into the void, their black figures instantly swallowed by darkness. Winters moved to the cockpit, settling into the co-pilot seat to monitor communications. Jumpers away, he confirmed, watching the infrared feed as 4 parachutes eventually deployed at low altitude. Feet dry, came Reynolds' voice through the headset moments later. Beginning ground phase. The aircraft banked, beginning its long journey back to friendly airspace. Winters closed his eyes briefly, his mind drifting back to 1989. The Moscow operation had been supposed to capture Baranov, then a rising star in the KGB's weapons division. Intelligence had identified him as the mastermind behind a new breed of portable nuclear devices designed for urban deployment by Soviet sleeper agents. The operation went catastrophically wrong. Winters' team of 4 was ambushed. 2 died instantly. Winters was captured and spent 72 hours in Baranov's personal interrogation facility before a daring rescue by his surviving teammate. By then, Baranov had disappeared, presumed dead in the chaos of the Soviet Union's final years. The ringing satellite phone jolted Winters from his memories. Colonel, it's Karen Coleman. Rachel's sister's voice was tense. Someone broke into Rachel's apartment last night. They took her laptop and some papers from her safe. Winters sat up straighter. How do you know about the break-in? Because I was there. After the memorial, I just wanted to be surrounded by her things. Colonel, before she left on that last mission, Rachel gave me something. Said if anything happened to her, I should open it after 3 weeks. What was it? A letter with a single phrase. Amber glass. She said, if I ever heard from you, I should tell you that. Winters' blood ran cold. Amber glass was the code name for the failed Moscow operation. Classified information that Rachel couldn't have known unless... She knew she was being set up, Winters realized. From the beginning. There's more, Karen said. The letter had a memory card hidden in the seal. It contains facility blueprints and guard rotations for a place in northern Iran, and a file about something called Project Aurora. Send it to this secure address. Now. Winters rattled off an encrypted email address. Colonel, is my sister alive? Winters hesitated only for a second. Yes, and we're bringing her home. As the aircraft continued its flight path, Winters received and reviewed Karen's files. The blueprint confirmed his suspicions about the facility layout, but it was the Aurora file that chilled him to the bone. Project. Aurora wasn't just a weapon system. It was a new class of electromagnetic pulse device, small enough to be transported in a diplomatic pouch, but powerful enough to disable the electrical grid of an entire city. Based on Soviet-era research but enhanced with modern technology, it could trigger what would appear to be a catastrophic grid failure without leaving evidence of an attack. Winters immediately transmitted the updated intelligence to Reynolds' team. Their mission had just become even more critical. On the ground, the SEAL team moved through the rugged terrain with practiced efficiency. Ghostwalker took point, his movements silent despite the rocky landscape. They traveled only by night, concealing themselves during daylight hours. By the second night, they had reached the ridge overlooking the facility. Ghost surveyed it through a high-powered thermal scope. 2 perimeter fences, 3 guard towers, approximately 20 personnel visible outside. Vehicle depot on the east side with 2 transport trucks and what looks like a Russian UAZ Jeep. Reynolds studied the compound through his own optics. Guard rotation? Every 30 minutes. Predictable patterns. These aren't their A-team troops. Doc Matthews prepared his medical kit. Any guess on what condition we'll find her in? No one answered. They didn't need to. All of them knew what 3 weeks in a black site meant. We go in at 0200, Reynolds decided. That gives us 2 hours to extract and reach the pickup zone. The approach to the facility went smoothly. Too smoothly, Ghost thought. The perimeter guards were almost careless in their routines. The fence's electronic security systems were easily bypassed with the equipment they'd brought. This feels wrong, Ghost whispered as they reached the main building's shadow. Security is lighter than expected. Stay frosty, Reynolds warned. Could be most of their personnel are inside. Using a specialized cutting tool, Doc created an entry point through a ground floor window. One by one, the team slipped inside, finding themselves in what appeared to be a storage area. Ghost took point again, leading them toward the central stairwell indicated on their blueprints. They encountered their first resistance at the stairwell door. 2 guards who barely had time to register surprise before being neutralized with suppressed shots. Reynolds gestured toward the descending stairs, and the team began their movement downward. The first subterranean level contained communications equipment and what appeared to be living quarters for the facility staff. The second housed more specialized electronic systems that Doc quickly photographed for intelligence purposes. It was on the 3rd underground level that they encountered serious resistance. As they rounded a corner, Ghost nearly walked into a patrol of 4 guards, 2 Iranians and 2 men whose bearing immediately identified them as former Russian military. The firefight was brief but intense. The team's superior training and night vision capability gave them the edge, but not before one of the Russians managed to trigger an alarm. Sirens wailed throughout the facility. So much for the quiet approach, Reynolds said grimly, reloading his weapon. Ghost, Doc, continue toward the detention area. I'll hold this junction with Johnson. The team split up, with Ghost and Doc descending to the 4th level. The detention area was exactly where the blueprints indicated, a series of 8 cells along a central corridor, monitored from a control room at the entrance. 2 guards in the control room died before they could reach their weapons. Doc quickly scanned the security monitors. 3 occupied cells, he reported. Cell 4 has 2 occupants. Cell 7 has 1. Cell 8 has 1. Ghost checked the cell access system. These aren't standard locks. Biometric. Plan B then, Doc said, pulling out a small breaching charge. The door to Cell 7 yielded to the controlled explosion. Ghost entered first, weapon ready, then lowered it immediately. Rachel Coleman sat on a metal chair in the center of the small room, her wrists secured to the armrest with heavy restraints. Her face was barely recognizable through the bruising, one eye swollen completely shut. Her SEAL-issued desert fatigues had been replaced with a gray prison jumpsuit stained with what was unmistakably blood. Despite her condition, Rachel's good eye focused sharply on Ghost. "Took you long enough," she managed, her voice a rasp. "Traffic was hell," Ghost replied, the team's gallows humor intact even here. He began working on her restraints while Doc checked her vital signs. Pulse elevated but steady. Dehydration evident. Multiple contusions and lacerations. At least 2 broken ribs. Possible internal bleeding, Doc reported clinically, though his hands shook slightly as he administered a shot of pain medication. "Can you walk?" Ghost asked. "I can fight," Rachel responded, attempting to stand and immediately stumbling. Ghost caught her. "Save it for another day, Lieutenant. Let's get you home first." Doc was examining her pupils. "They've drugged her. Some kind of chemical cocktail." Rachel grabbed his wrist with surprising strength. "Not just drugs, serum, Project Aurora, not just weapon, operators too." Doc and Ghost exchanged glances. "What do you mean, operators?" "Human enhancement. Soviet formula from Cold War. Makes operatives resistant to interrogation. Can function despite injuries." She gestured weakly to herself. Test subject. The implications were staggering. If Baranov had perfected a chemical compound that could create operatives capable of withstanding extreme physical trauma and interrogation techniques. "The others," Rachel said urgently. "Cell 4. American scientists forced to work on Aurora." "We'll get them," Ghost assured her, lifting Rachel into a fireman's carry despite her weak protests. "Doc, take the lead. Let's move." As they exited the cell, an explosion rocked the upper levels of the facility, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. "Reynolds making a distraction," Ghost surmised, adjusting Rachel's weight across his shoulders. Doc moved towards Cell 4, preparing another breaching charge. The door blew inward, revealing 2 haggard-looking men in their 50s, cowering in the corner. "U.S. Navy SEALs," Doc announced. "We're here to bring you home." One of the men stood shakily. "Dr. Marcus Reeves, Sandia National Laboratories. This is Dr. Alan Chen, Lawrence Livermore." The names meant nothing to Ghost, but Doc's expression changed. "The EMP specialists?" Dr. Reeves nodded grimly. "They've been forcing us to work on Project Aurora. It's worse than anything you can imagine. Not just an EMP device. It's a system designed to trigger a cascading failure across the entire U.S. power grid while appearing to be a natural event." "We'll debrief later," Ghost cut in. "Can both of you walk?" Both scientists nodded. Dr. Chen pointed to a metal briefcase in the corner. "We need to take that. It contains our research, if Baranov recovers it." Doc secured the briefcase while Ghost led the way back to the stairwell, still carrying Rachel. Reynolds and Johnson were engaged in a fierce firefight at the junction, keeping a growing number of facility personnel at bay. "Package secured," Ghost reported, "plus 2 American civilians." Reynolds glanced at Rachel's condition, his expression hardening. "Extraction route is compromised. We need an alternate exit." "Service elevator," Rachel mumbled against Ghost's shoulder. "Northeast corner, goes to vehicle bay." Reynolds nodded. "Johnson, Ghost, take point. Doc, you're responsible for the package and civilians. I'll cover our 6." The team moved as one toward the northeast corner, engaging in brief, violent exchanges with facility guards along the way. The service elevator was where Rachel had indicated, but the power had been cut to prevent their escape. "We climb," Reynolds ordered, forcing open the doors to reveal the elevator shaft. One by one, they ascended the emergency ladder, with Ghost still carrying Rachel over one shoulder, an incredible feat of strength born from years of training and pure determination. When they reached the ground floor, the vehicle bay doors were locked down. "Breach it," Reynolds commanded. Doc placed their last explosive charge on the bay doors. The detonation tore a hole large enough for them to pass through, revealing the compound's vehicle area. Two transport trucks and the UAZ Jeep sat under floodlights, with guards scrambling to establish defensive positions. The Jeep, Reynolds decided, fastest option. What followed was a chaotic scramble across the open ground. Reynolds and Johnson laid down suppressive fire while Ghost carried Rachel toward the vehicle. Doc guided the two scientists, keeping them low and moving fast. They reached the Jeep under a hail of gunfire. Johnson took a round to the shoulder but kept fighting, his weapon never silent. Reynolds slid into the driver's seat, hot-wiring the vehicle with practiced ease. The engine roared to life just as a new threat appeared, a heavy machine gun being set up at the compound's main entrance, directly in their path to freedom. "Hold on!" Reynolds shouted, slamming the accelerator to the floor. The Jeep leaped forward, racing toward the machine gun position. At the last possible moment, Reynolds swerved, using a loading ramp to send the vehicle airborne over the gun emplacement. They crashed down on the other side, the Jeep's suspension screaming in protest but holding. They burst through the outer gate, racing into the darkness of the Iranian night with facility vehicles in hot pursuit. "Extraction point is 8 miles southeast," Ghost reported, checking his GPS. Rachel stirred in the back of the Jeep where Doc was treating her. "Baronoff," she whispered. "Where is he?" "Not in the facility," Doc told her. "He knew. You were coming. Helicopter. Left yesterday." Reynolds cursed, pushing the Jeep to its limits as they navigated the rough terrain. Behind them, headlights bounced in the darkness, pursuit vehicles gaining ground. "We're not going to outrun them," Johnson warned, clutching his wounded shoulder. As if in answer, the night sky above them thundered with the sound of approaching rotors. For a moment, everyone tensed, expecting Iranian military helicopters. Instead, the distinctive silhouette of a Sikorsky MH-53 Pave Low, one of the last in service before being officially retired, appeared over the ridgeline, its miniguns already firing at the pursuit vehicles. "That's not our scheduled extraction," Reynolds said in confusion. Ghost grinned through the dust and sweat on his face. "No, that's better. That's Iron Man." Colonel James Winters stood braced in the open door of the MH-53, a safety line his only protection against the swirling void beneath. Through his night vision goggles, he watched the Jeep racing across the rocky terrain, pursuit vehicles falling behind under the devastating fire from the helicopter's miniguns. "Light 'em up," he ordered into his headset, and the helicopter's pilot released a series of flares to guide the Jeep to a suitable landing zone. The moment the helicopter touched down, the SEAL team moved with practiced efficiency. Ghost emerged first, still carrying Rachel despite hours of physical exertion. Doc guided the two scientists, while Reynolds and the wounded Johnson provided covering fire. As they boarded, Winters got his first look at Rachel Coleman's condition. The young lieutenant's face was barely recognizable through the bruising and swelling, but her one good eye found his, and the corner of her mouth twitched in what might have been a smile. "Colonel," she rasped. "Knew you'd come." "Of course we came," Winters replied, his voice gruff with emotion. "SEALs don't leave their own behind." The helicopter lifted off, just as the first Iranian vehicles crested the ridge. Another burst from the miniguns discouraged closer pursuit. "We need to get her to the carrier medical bay," Doc shouted over the rotor noise. "She's been injected with some kind of experimental serum. Soviet Cold War stuff." Winters nodded grimly. "Course is already set for the USS Nimitz in the Arabian Sea. ETA 90 minutes. As Doc continued treating Rachel and Johnson, Winters moved to where the two scientists sat, still looking shell-shocked from their ordeal. "Dr. Reeves, Dr. Chen," he acknowledged. "What can you tell me about Project Aurora?" Dr. Reeves clutched the metal briefcase to his chest like a shield. "It's not just an EMP weapon, Colonel. It's designed to trigger a cascading failure across the entire U.S. electrical grid. The device itself leaves no signature. It would appear to be a natural system failure." "But that's not the worst part," Dr. Chen added. "The Aurora system is already in place. 3 devices positioned at key nodes in the U.S. power infrastructure, ready to activate." Winters felt the blood drain from his face. "How long?" "The activation sequence is set for 72 hours from now," Dr. Reeves said. "That's why we were still in the facility. Final calibrations." Winters moved back to Rachel's side. Despite her injuries, she was struggling to remain conscious, to communicate. "Rachel," he said gently, "what was Baronoff's plan for you?" She swallowed painfully. "Cover. Blown 2 weeks ago. They knew. I was SEAL. Baronoff decided test subject for serum. Said if I survived, would be valuable asset. The serum. What does it do exactly? Soviet formula. Enhanced for durability. Operators can function despite trauma. Resist interrogation. But side effects." She winced, a spasm of pain crossing her features. "They have operators already enhanced," she continued, each word clearly an effort. "Suicide mission. To protect Aurora activation. 5 targets. High value." Her strength gave out then, her head lolling to the side as unconsciousness finally claimed her. Doc immediately moved in, checking her vitals. "She's stable," he reported, "but we need that carrier, fast." Winters returned to the cockpit, his mind racing. If what Rachel and the scientists said was true, they were facing a threat unlike anything since the Cold War's darkest days. A coordinated attack on the U.S. power grid, coupled with assassination attempts against key personnel who could respond to the crisis. "Pilot, get me a secure line to Admiral Hargrove. Priority Alpha." As the helicopter raced toward the carrier group, Winters briefed the Admiral on everything they'd discovered. To his surprise, Hargrove didn't seem shocked. "We've had our suspicions about Baronoff for months," she admitted, "but we had no idea how far advanced the Aurora project was. The USS Nimitz has been placed under your operational control, Colonel. CIA Director Keller is aboard and waiting for your debrief." Something in her tone made Winters pause. "Admiral, did Keller know about the Aurora devices already being in place?" There was a long silence before Hargrove responded. "That's something you'll need to ask him directly, James. Tread carefully. Keller has friends in very high places." The line went dead, leaving Winters with a growing sense of unease. The helicopter landed on the USS Nimitz 90 minutes later. A medical team was waiting to rush Rachel and Johnson to the carrier's advanced surgical unit. The two scientists were escorted to a secure debriefing room with their precious briefcase. Winters found CIA Director Richard Keller waiting on the flight deck. At 67, Keller was an imposing figure, tall, silver-haired, with the confident bearing of a man accustomed to power. His cold blue eyes assessed Winters with clinical detachment. "Colonel Winters, I understand you directly contravened my orders regarding Lieutenant Coleman." Winters met the gaze unflinchingly. "With respect, Director, my orders come from Naval Special Warfare Command, not Langley. This was a CIA operation." which nearly got one of my operators killed and apparently placed 3 EMP devices on American soil. So, you'll forgive me if I'm not particularly concerned with your approval. Keller's expression hardened. You have no idea what you've done. The Aurora operation was years in the making. We were tracking every aspect of Baranov's network. While he prepared to cripple our entire power grid, Winters challenged. That wasn't in your briefing to Admiral Hargrove. Something shifted in Keller's eyes, a calculation being made. Follow me, Colonel. This conversation should continue in private. Winters followed Keller to the carrier's secure communications room. Once inside, Keller dismissed the communications officers with a curt gesture. What I'm about to tell you never leaves this room, Keller began once they were alone. Baranov and I have history that predates your Moscow operation in '89. What kind of history? We worked together during the latter years of the Cold War, an arrangement beneficial to both our countries. Winters felt his stomach turn. You're telling me you were running Baranov as an asset? It was more complicated than that, Keller said dismissively. A balancing of power. Baranov provided certain technologies to us. We ensured his operation remained intact through the Soviet collapse. And now he's planning to attack the United States, Winters said incredulously. Some asset. Keller's face remained impassive. The Aurora devices were never meant to be activated. They were a bargaining chip. Baranov's insurance policy. We've been negotiating their removal for months. While Americans' lives hang in the balance, Winters could barely contain his disgust. Those aren't negotiations, Director. That's treason. Keller's expression darkened. Be very careful, Colonel. Men who throw that word around tend to have unfortunate accidents. The threat hung in the air between them. In that moment, Winters realized just how deep the corruption went. This wasn't just about Baranov or Project Aurora. It was about decades of compromise and moral failure at the highest levels of intelligence. The devices will be deactivated, Keller continued. That was always the plan. Baranov gets his payment, the devices are neutralized, and America never knows how vulnerable it truly was. And what about Rachel Coleman? Winters demanded. Was her suffering part of your plan too? Coleman knew the risks when she volunteered for the operation. Did she volunteer to be experimented on with Soviet-era chemical compounds? To be tortured for weeks? Something like regret flickered across Keller's face, quickly suppressed. There are always casualties in our line of work, Colonel. You know that better than most. Winters stepped closer, his voice dropping to a dangerous quiet. What I know is that you were willing to leave an American service member behind enemy lines. What I know is that you've been compromised by a foreign agent for decades. What I know is that you're going to face justice for this. Keller smiled thinly. And who exactly will bring this justice, Colonel? Your word against mine? A retired SEAL versus the Director of Central Intelligence? The door to the communications room suddenly opened. Admiral Hargrove entered, accompanied by 2 armed Navy officers. Actually, Director Keller, it won't just be Colonel Winters' word, Hargrove said calmly. This conversation has been recorded under a FISA warrant signed by the Attorney General 12 hours ago. You are being relieved of duty pending investigation for treason, conspiracy, and violation of numerous national security protocols. Keller's face drained of color. This is absurd. I was acting under presidential authority. Were you? Hargrove raised an eyebrow. That's not what the president said when I briefed him an hour ago. As the officers took Keller into custody, Winters felt no satisfaction, only a bone-deep weariness. The Cold War had never truly ended. It had just gone underground, festering in the shadows. The Aurora devices? He asked Hargrove. Special units are moving to secure all 3 locations based on the information from Dr. Reeves and Dr. Chen. The enhanced operators Rachel mentioned are being tracked by FBI counterterrorism teams. Winters nodded. And Baranov? In the wind, for now. But without Keller's protection, his network will be vulnerable. I want to be part of the hunt, Winters said firmly. Hargrove studied him for a moment. I thought you were retiring, Colonel. Seems I have unfinished business. 72 hours later, Rachel Coleman awoke in the carrier's medical bay, her body beginning the long process of healing. She found Winters sitting beside her bed, his weathered face showing every one of his 63 years. The Aurora devices? She asked immediately, her voice stronger than before. Neutralized, Winters assured her. The enhanced operators, too. Relief washed over her face. And Baranov? Still out there, but we're hunting him. Rachel nodded, then asked, Keller? In custody, facing multiple charges. Winters leaned forward. Rachel, what you did? Surviving? Gathering intelligence even while being tortured. It's beyond extraordinary. She looked away. I just kept thinking about what you taught me. The old Cold War resistance techniques. Find an anchor memory. Build a mental safe room. Never give them everything. Winters reached into his pocket and pulled out a small object. A vintage Rolex Submariner watch, worn with age but still functioning perfectly. This was given to me by my mentor after our team rescued 6 POWs in Vietnam. It's tradition, passed down to the next generation of warriors who exemplify what it means to be a SEAL. He placed it gently on her bedside table. It's yours now. Rachel stared at the watch, then at Winters. I don't understand. The SEALs are evolving, Rachel. The old guard like me, we had our war, our missions. But the future belongs to operators like you. He smiled slightly. You survived something that would have broken most of us old cold warriors. That deserves recognition. 3 months later, at the Naval Special Warfare Center in Coronado, Rachel Coleman stood before a class of SEAL candidates, men and women preparing for the most demanding military training in the world. Her physical scars had faded somewhat, though the psychological ones would take longer to heal. She wore the Rolex Submariner on her wrist, a symbol of the continuity between generations of warriors. The enemy is always evolving, she told them. But so are we. What remains constant are the principles that define us: loyalty, resilience, and the absolute refusal to leave anyone behind. In the back of the room, Colonel James Winters listened with quiet pride. The Cold War might have evolved into new forms of conflict, but the spirit that had carried America through those dark decades lived on in operators like Rachel. Outside, on a memorial wall bearing the names of fallen SEALs, a fresh space remained unfilled, reserved for those who would make the ultimate sacrifice in conflicts yet to come. But today, there was one less name to add. One more warrior had come home. And somewhere in the shadows, Viktor Baranov still waited, the last ghost of a war most Americans thought long over. The game continued, with new players taking the field. But the stakes remained just as high as they had been during those tense years when nuclear annihilation seemed just minutes away. For Colonel James Iron Man Winters, the final mission of his career was clear: complete what he had started in Moscow all those years ago. For Rachel Coleman, the mission was to carry forward the legacy of those who had come before, to ensure that the thin line of warriors standing between America and chaos remained unbroken. The beacon that had saved Rachel's life now sat in a display case at SEAL Team 6 headquarters, a reminder that even from the grave, a signal could bring life, if someone was listening for it.
I just want to take a moment to say a huge thank you to each and every one of you. Folded hands, your love, support, likes, comments, and subscriptions mean the world to me. Without you, this journey wouldn't be possible. Every view, every share, and every encouraging word keeps me motivated to create more content for you all. I'm truly grateful to have such an amazing community by my side. Let's keep growing together and making this journey even more special. Red heart.